Hey there! In this episode, we talked to Kelsey Anderson, an intuitive energy healer and psychic medium. We discussed her journey of shedding her corporate life to step into her true aligned purpose of intuitive healing. I'm Lauren Leon.
And I'm Frank.
We are a married couple learning how to develop our own intuition. And this is episode 63 of Clairvoyaging. Wayfeather Media presents Clairvoyaging.
Yeah.
You feel that? Those are the vibes.
Oh, we're back.
We're getting the vibes,
We're
guys.
back, baby. And it's weirder than ever.
How's everyone feeling today? Frank, you good?
How about you?
Oh, just freaking dandy.
You know what? I think this is even better. The second time we recorded this intro, hours ago.
Yep.
Little technical mishap.
Yep.
We don't point fingers around here.
Oh, careful with that microphone, Frankie boy.
But we're here now and we're ready to rock.
We're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some allergies.
It's okay.
And it's making me more like ADHD, I think, or something.
I know.
See, I'm fiddling with the volume while talking.
What? We're literally doing a podcast and you're fidget spinning over here.
I am having a hard time.
Listen, it's
you
fine.
guys, the part of this is just being as vulnerable and honest about your journey as possible. It's just a tough day for me.
It's okay.
Physically, mentally, I don't know. Anyway.
Not every day can be a great day.
Well, we're ready for this one to move on.
And we're going to keep us on track today.
We sure are.
Hey, Lauren, do we have
Guess
any updates?
What? We got a coffee.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
Chrissy she bought us a coffee.
Chrissy!
Wait,
here we go.
Yeah. Yay! Hooray, Chrissy!
A roar of applause. A roar of applause?
Yeah. Okay, wait. I'm going to read this part of her message. Chrissy gave us a little message on Buy Me a Coffee, and it just made me and Frank laugh. She was saying, it's like when you were a kid with your friends and you see someone cool and you want to ask them stuff, but don't want to sound stupid. So you tell one of your friends, you ask them. I'm too embarrassed. You do it. Well, that's what you do for me. You have the guts to touch on a subject and ask questions that we're all wanting the answers to. And I think that's really funny because I'm happy to ask questions like, what do dolphins' thoughts sound like?
Chrissy, you pushed us up to the front of the circle of friends and we're the ones who, okay, I'll do it.
Fine.
All right, fine. Yeah, hold on. I'll do it in a second.
Yeah. Thank you, Chrissy. And if you want to buy us a coffee, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/clairvoyaging podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for fueling us.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
Kelsey Anderson is really cool. Also, during the episode, she gave us sort of an impromptu reading, which just so happened to change the course of our last 2 weeks a little bit. It started helping us clarify what we want to do with our lives. Yeah.
As you may know, if you've heard the last couple of shows, we are in a period of realignment right now. What's the word for, how do we do this?
We want to take aligned action.
Aligned action.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And, to do that, you kind of just got to know what you're about and what you want. And Kelsey got us there in a way that we haven't gotten ourselves there. So it was very helpful and things are moving. Things are looking good. Yeah.
I'm excited for the future of when we eventually share some updates for what we might have going on. Because, it kind of helped me go like, wait, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So thank you, Kelsey, for that.
Yeah.
And with that, I feel like let's just get it going.
Let's rock and roll.
All right.
Say something good.
Roll out the red carpet. Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us on Clairvoyaging. We love to hear people's backstories. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you to doing this intuitive work?
I love that. Thank you for asking. The backstory is kind of a windy one for me. When I was younger, abilities. I think you will hear this a lot, and you have heard this a lot from other mediums and intuitive energy healers, that a lot of us have this ability that happens early on in life, and it gets kind of shut down through societal pressure, family pressure, people not understanding, right, like what these abilities are. But early on, I had a lot of hearing, seeing, and knowing. I remember one distinct time that I like told my parents, I see this ghost and it slammed our door and I don't like it. And you hear a lot of like, that's your imagination. And so that was how I felt as a young child. Those are my memories. And then somewhere along the way, I shut them down. I think safety response, or just wanting to be accepted and loved. And by shut them down, I mean, my guides were always there. Like, I always felt the presence of being loved and comforted and held, especially like guided to safety in my early years when, you're a teen and you're out. Like, I always felt like I made choices that other people weren't making. And I always ended up being really safe or really guided in those years.
Yeah, wow.
But especially in college too. But I did a lot of numbing. Like, that's my backstory. And that's my truth, is I numbed out these abilities because I didn't know what they were. And I didn't know how to be safe with them. Mm-hmm. And so somewhere along the age of 25, I hit that first awakening crisis of self, where it all started coming back online super quickly. I went down the self-help rabbit hole first, like big seminars, every book I could get my hands on. I mean, you name it. I'm like shoveling the information into my body, trying to make sense, right, of what I'm understanding. And I'm slowly like not able to be around groups of people. I start taking anxiety medication. I'm having panic attacks. And I'm just like, what is happening? So that's a little of my backstory. Around 25, I was in a partnership, and I ended that partnership, hopped in my car for a couple months, lived out of my car in like national parks and just in a tent. I sold my portion of my house and quit my job, and I just left it all behind. Because I had to, like, I had to just like purge all of me to accept in this new version of me. And so it was a really wild time, but really my story starts, I think, for me, like that 25, when I was 25, this last decade has been this massive spiritual, we can call it a spiritual awakening, but it's a spiritual meandering, really. There's layers and grief and processes. And so, and then I made my way to a little town in Missoula, Montana. And I remember I was staying in a teepee on a reservation, and I was out in the middle of a field, like night sky. I could see every star. I was alone. It was freezing. And I just thought, like, my soul needs to come here because I'm meant to learn something. And so I did end up moving there. And I had just finished my master's. I was actually like doing my master's when I was living out of my car. I'd be like in a Starbucks parking lot and just trying to take the conventional path. I'm like, okay, if I finish a master's, get a great career, everything will be okay. Like, it will fix itself. But of course, you know how this goes. It meanders into something where it's just an unavoidable kind of dark night of the soul, where you have to figure out who you are and where you're going. And from there, I got introduced to Reiki. And then I started like an advanced energy intuition cohort when we finally moved to Seattle. And from there, the studies of everything like mindfulness-based stress reduction. I think everything I could possibly bring into my space, I did, until I felt safe and comfortable enough to like outwardly express these abilities that were happening.
That's so interesting to me. Like, that's such a journey especially, so that's been the last like 10 years. You went from like, where were you living?
I was living in Florida. So Florida to Montana to Seattle.
You're probably the best thing that's ever come out of Florida.
I believe at this point that might be true. Didn't hear it from me.
I never drop an opportunity to speak poorly of that state.
Anyway. I was avoiding saying where I was from, but I'm in integrity. So when you ask, I'm going to tell you. But
sorry to do that to you.
Yeah.
I trust the process. It has to happen.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So now now just to bring us to the present, you're you do intuitive work? Do you do like energy healing along with it? Or you do like, what is your like sweet spot? Is it readings or like group stuff? What is it?
That is a lovely question as well. So it's changed. It started with Reiki, where I would read people during session and then, but like incorporated into Reiki. And now it's just my own flavor of energy healing, meaning different modalities, things I've channeled, things I've learned along the way. So it's an intuitive energy healing and guidance and the psychic mediumship piece. So the readings as well. I kind of package it in different ways. Like I have an intuitive healing and guidance one, which has some mediumship aspects to it. And then an awaken your joy, which is for people that are just really trying to find like joy again in their life after they've gone through a dark time. That stems from, my personal experience of going through that. And then a soul path, like an illuminate your soul path offering, where I work with people in more of a visualization guided reading scenario. So it all kind of meanders. I also do teach group classes that are movement and breath work based, where I do like group energy and readings. So that's one of the things I love to do as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. I always like to know, so like when you had the like events as a kid, were your parents, was it just like, did you get the sense that they were just like scared of it, or just like, no, it's just your imagination, like literally just the kind of trope of like parents? Was it, and also how did they react once you started shifting into like, I'm stepping into my intuitive abilities and all that?
Well, when I was younger, I think I was really good at looking at adults and mimicking behavior or masking my behavior. And that comes in from the neurodivergent piece too. Like you learn really early on that in order to be loved and accepted and understood, you have to mask who you are and you can't just live in your wild joy. And my abilities were all wrapped into that. So it was a bit complex. My parents, I think it's a little of both, right? I think they get hit with this is uncomfortable, but then it comes out as the parenting trope. I don't know if there was a deep understanding for them. I do know that I was a really like anxious kid and a quote unquote stubborn kid. And I would do things like show up for dance class and be in the car and then tell my mom, I'm not going today. And like they could not get me to go in the building. And looking back, it's because of whatever I was experiencing sensory-wise, like with energies, having been at school all day, or maybe the teacher like was in a rough mood and I could sense it and like not go in. So I think I just got labeled as a difficult child, and and they still came through, like, but just in different ways. So
that's really interesting to think about. Like, just we like program our kids, or we program ourselves into like doing something, even though like our body is going like, I don't want to. Like we just had this conversation about like conscious parenting, and it just reminds me of like a kid who doesn't want to be controlled. And sometimes it's just like, maybe they're having sensitivity to the energy around them. And we're like, no, you're going.
Yeah.
I like feel that so much.
Yeah.
Because I was not difficult, but just a very sensitive kid. Maybe that was difficult. I don't know. And I mean, to this day, I don't want to do anything. But really, like, if it's a situation with around a lot of people or whatever, I have to get into a mode where I can manage that and like attend to that kind of thing. And I am so tired afterwards. So yeah, as a kid, like I had sent like, then I don't know. It's hard to tell like where like a mental health issue and like just a deep sensitivity overlap or anything.
Yeah.
I was always very concerned about like, if I saw something that was out of place. I remember I was going to I was probably like 5 or something. It was a swimming lesson at a high school that I eventually was going to attend in high school. But I'd see like rocks and pebbles that weren't with the other rocks and pebbles, and I would like cry. I'd be like, they don't belong here. They need to go home. And like that kind of thing. And I still feel that like way about certain things. I'm like, oh, you're out of place.
Yeah.
And not in an OCD way. Like, oh, I wasn't trying to organize. I was like, I feel so bad for things that are alone.
Yeah, like a deep recognition. Yeah. It's amazing as kids what we recognize and how it comes out in language versus how it feels in our body. And so,
yeah, that's a great point.
We often are like, that feels out of place. But what we're really sensing is just a layer that is communication and information that nobody talks about or rarely talks about. And so we have to put it into these containers where it could be something we don't have language for.
And then, your parents were like, why are you doing that? We're late for swim class.
Yeah, probably. That's
When
I say I was being difficult, that was probably, I mean, that's a pain in the butt. I'd be like, even if it were my kid now, I'd be like, those are rocks. They're fine. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean?
But that still, too, and I have to catch myself all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, let's explore what that is. Why do you feel that way? Like,
oh man, it takes such a special parent to like cool down the concern about lateness to some arbitrary thing.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that you're giving your kid that time to chill and to work it out.
It's like one of the hardest things, parenting, reparenting, going through the process of your spiritual awakening alongside your child and then figuring out how to parent through that. It's a deep process. And
there's some like working through your inner inner child stuff too and going like, I would have appreciated this as a kid, so I'm going to do this. And then like, whoa, but how much of that is just indulging? Too much.
Indulging, projecting.
Projecting so much. Yeah. So when you like, was there a part of your being or like essence that felt like it required the, as you call it, like meandering or like kind of just because you were like living in different national parks and stuff? Was there like a piece to that or like something that you felt like you needed to get peace by that kind of being alone through that?
Yeah, looking back, I can figure out what was happening, but I had just gone to one of those massive seminars, the, awakening self-help, like 9,000 people seminars. And like what's one of those? Like land?
I call it landslide.
I've been to them all. I'm so sorry to say.
Landmark.
It wasn't Landmark. That was later on.
Okay.
That was interesting. But it was actually like the Tony Robbins big event.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. And so it was my first time that someone said like, hey, you can show up as you are. And while it's not the teachings I go off of now, and it's very far removed from that, it was the first time someone in my life had given full permission to awaken yourself. And so I took the grain of that like core, and that's what prompted it of like, oh, wait, I don't have to live this conventional life. I can actually just go do this wild thing and no one can actually tell me what to do because I'm an adult. And so it was the first time, that I got to do that. But looking back now, I needed to be alone with nature so I could hear myself, I could hear the messages, and I could hear nature speaking. And there was too much noise everywhere else. And so by being alone in a tent and like listening to the, wild animals and the breeze and the wind, I journaled so much throughout that time because I was pulling in so many like messages.
Okay, hold on. We have to back up a little bit. Okay, so you were 25 years old. You're feeling overwhelmed and like you're out of place. Is that okay?
Very out of place.
And you go full psychic Jack Kerouac and you hit the road. And
Jack Kerouac?
Kerouac. And you were experiencing, while you were on the road, were you experiencing panic attacks during that and stuff? Or was it before that? Or when did you start addressing these things as like what you needed as a signal for you, for like a trigger that you needed to address?
Yeah, so the panic attacks, from what I could tell, came on around 22, 23. And so they were a couple years, 22 to 25. I still had them up until like 28, 29. But during the time I was on the road, I don't recall experiencing any. at all.
Oh, wow.
So when I was living in nature, it wasn't until I went back into a big city, and actually in Montana, I didn't either. But when I went back to Seattle, they started again. So being back in a big city with like I was commuting. I was actually in corporate. So I ended up, my career was in corporate management consultant. So business consulting at like these huge, huge companies. And imagine the energy.
Yeah.
I will share this because I think it's relevant, is that I remember being in some of these boardrooms, right, at these massive companies. And I would travel like every couple weeks for work. And I remember taking notes because I was a business analyst, project manager for a while. And I would give the notes to like my team, but it wouldn't necessarily be things people had said. It was just things I inferred. And at the time, like, are you sure this person said that? And I'd be like, oh, well, there was a detail that like I would have to explain how I arrived at this information. And I think it was nuanced enough that people didn't call me out on it. But there was a couple times I would like predict things like this will be the most challenging person we have to work with. And the reason why is because X, Y, Z. And she has this personal thing I can tell that's going on in her life. Or his life, right? And then it would be true. And that would end up being our hardest like client to work with.
Oh my gosh.
Before I knew what was going on, it manifested in some very weird and wild ways for me.
Be careful with what you say, because you're going to get the corporate world to be like, oh, hey, we need staff psychics. We need like,
we need a Kelsey to let us know if we got the right hire.
Oh, this is Kelsey, our intuitive consultant.
Yeah.
And she's here. She's just going to be observing today.
I mean, you say that and I know I'm like, okay, regenerative, like, are they doing something beautiful for the world? Call me, like I'm in, but
sure.
There's some boundaries for sure. But I was always in on the hiring. Like I was always one of the people doing the interviewing and hiring in a lot of the roles I was in. And I remember I would be at odds with almost everyone else. Like I'd be, 8 people would say they're awesome, they're going to do a great job. And I would be like, no, you don't see the layers. Like you don't see how this is going to play out. This person is actually really ego driven or is going to be really mean to, these people. And then just give it 6 months. It just
would they come back to you and be like, you were right, or was it always just like this?
No, corporate doesn't do that.
You're never going to get that
in the
satisfaction.
corporate world. No, it never.
No. You have.
Oh, that's so infuriating.
You have the moment, and then everything is gone. No one's going to listen or remember what you did.
That's where my gavel of justice comes in, where I'm like, I want them to know that I was right.
You've avoided 10 deep meeting rooms for a while. You haven't had to like.
No, I know.
I'm so happy for you.
Yes.
Just to even,
I would not thrive in that.
Like just to even recognize the ego is beautiful because it will definitely always be the leader until otherwise said.
That's so interesting though. You're like, did you feel really unaligned and like at odds with what you were doing in the business world, the corporate world?
Yeah, it was, I mean, horrible isn't the right word, but like I would go in and still just try to support people. And I would do my work, but I really would just be like, how's your day going? You want to talk about it? You want to?
Yeah. The classic millennial manager.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I was that.
You were doing like healing work without like having the training yet.
Yeah. And when I was not healing myself and experiencing this, it was also, I want to like recognize it was really rough for everyone around me. Like it was not easy for the people I worked with. I don't think when I was not healing myself, because it comes out in really rough ways. Like you get really grieving, a little bit, you can sense grief, or maybe there's like a bit of a trigger where I get overwhelmed easily. And so I would get overwhelmed in places. And so I can imagine like working alongside someone who's not aware of or healing in their journey could also present challenges. So I go back and think about that too.
Oh, that's really interesting. I think about that with the job I had 2 jobs ago that you also worked there.
I remember that
the
one.
The most toxic place ever.
Right.
But I think about like myself, like I was just only maybe, starting there like a year or 2 after losing my brother and in such a toxic environment and I also went through like a huge breakup at some point there. And just thinking about how like if you're really not healing yourself, even though you're trying to like you said, I would be like, how are you? I want to talk about like the real stuff, but also not being a fully healed person.
Yeah.
The overwhelm really, gets a hold of you. So it's an interesting perspective I haven't thought about.
So do you think it was more, in retrospect, do you think it was more for you, was it the overwhelm of being in a environment with a lot of people like Seattle, or was it the overwhelm of trying to shoehorn yourself into like a corporate gig that has no room for this?
It's definitely the shoehorn, now that I can look back at it, because I think any healer, anyone that's doing this work, anyone that can read people, if they have the right boundaries and tools and teachings, they can safeguard themselves, safeguard other people. You can have normal interactions. You can be around lots of energies. In fact, it can be super interesting. But at the time, I was so out of my soul purpose, so out of alignment, and I knew it. And that's the thing, is I knew it for years. The whispers, the nudges, the things, like life got infinitely harder every day, just in all of the craziest ways. It's that thing of like, you wake up and you have like a sunshiny day versus I would wake up, I'd be rushing, my car wouldn't start, I'd get a nail in my tire, I'd spill my coffee, I'd have an eyelash in my eye, I'd pull over.
Yeah.
Like that was one of my days one morning.
Yeah.
It just was it was just insane. So the minute I shifted into more alignment, everything in my life started getting more beautiful, more synchronous. It was just been a full shift for me.
Did you have friends that were like, what do you mean you're going into nature and like you live in a tent sometimes? Like, did you feel that like contrast of like, what's up, Kelsey?
I think I left behind every single one of my friends from childhood and from that time.
Wow.
I don't have a single friend from that time still. And no love was lost. I also don't think being with me on my path was their path either, because it was such a different shift. But I do think about that. I take that back. Like, there are a few people I stay in touch with that are actually now married into my family. So that's really wonderful.
Really?
From like a friend. So I want to make sure that I acknowledge that. But that feels like something that was meant to be, right? Like it just.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
But I shoehorned myself into, I'm sure, based on what you have shared too, like, how does that feel with you? Because that really vibes with your journey as well, right? The shoehorning into.
Yeah. 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 When I think about like, I actually, when we were like in San Diego this weekend, and I was like driving through certain areas where, I was working at a restaurant and going through some really challenging stuff. And you're young, you kind of surround yourself, if you're looking, like you said, looking to like numb your feelings, or you're overwhelmed because there's part of you that's not fully healed, you're going to surround yourself with like people that aren't quite aligned with you. And I was just thinking, like yesterday, it's interesting. I don't talk to like, and you lose touch with a lot of different people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I deeply resonate with your entire story. The only difference, the big difference really is just that I don't have any like tangible psychic abilities to blame it on. I'd love to.
Not yet, though. I got a bit of a read on you actually starting yesterday, but we can talk about that later.
Oh, this is fun. I'm thrilled to hear about this. But yeah, like to your point, like growing up super sensitive and like just trying to force myself, and sorry, the audience has heard about this so many times, but trying to force myself into the program of, corporate work and all that stuff. And like, I wanted to be independent and have my own space. So I got into corporate work like pretty young. And I like, as much as I hated it, it was just like part of the pure misery of the daily grind was just part of, this is life. This is what it's supposed to be like. Right. And it wasn't until like when COVID happened and then I was working from home, I'm like, this is a terrible time in history of the world. And this is also one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me personally.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to say like everyone I was with was toxic, but like, you know, at points, there are certain individuals, because maybe of my openness and wanting to help, I would attract some toxicity, and I wanted to help so bad. But also,
And they saw that in you.
It came at a cost.
Yeah,
That's so
like
true.
their
But
energy,
then also-
right? Saw your energy and just do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same thing though. Panic attacks starting when I was 22, and you know, I'd be like, I don't know what this is. I went to a doctor. They're like, oh, you have high blood pressure. I'm like, no, I don't. Excuse me.
Good job, medicine.
Yeah. So I was on that, and then I do this mostly now. So being in my own space, under control, not being forced on a daily basis to have to try to prove my value as an individual, like I feel amazing. I would like some more money. That's difficult right now, but like I feel great.
I understand that I am abundant. You just say that. I understand that I'm abundant and I'm attracting energy. I feel abundant. I feel the flow of money into my life. And I know that sounds so woo, and everyone's going to be like, oh, not this again, not the mantras, not the...
No.
It's helpful.
Our thoughts are so magnetic to everything, the way we show up in the world, and then it impacts our energy, and our energy impacts how we show up in the world, and it impacts who we meet and the opportunities that get presented to us because of how we show up in the world. It's like this beautiful map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just telling you, because I started saying some like mantras like money flows to me easily and effortlessly, or money is abundant. And I'll say it like kind of cheeky to you. And like a few days later, something happens that's like, oh, that just confirmed, you know, some little like abundance thing. And I like show gratitude or whatever. And I tell Frank, but I'm like, you gotta say it out loud to me too.
You know, it's one thing to love hearing. Like, I like the mantras and stuff like that. But when your wife is doing the like Groucho Marx eyebrows while saying, I love abundance, you are abundant, I'm like, okay, back off.
This is getting invasive. But I love it because her energy is just like,
little dance.
Here we go.
Yeah. So no,
I had to do some like some serious unwinding of like scarcity mindset and all that. But I've done some stuff just to get rid of those limiting beliefs.
That's like an ongoing journey though, you know?
Yes,
that's my ongoing journey too. Like that's where I'm at. My process right now is the scarcity, the wound of like showing up, of being able to be visible, because I've been doing this work for a lot longer than like any of my socials or anything would show, because I was scared to be visible. So it was all word of mouth or like, in people in my circle. And so just this like last 6 months, something activated in me and was like, time to be visible, get ready.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Time to be on a podcast.
Yeah, it's time to be on a podcast. It's crazy.
No, like legit within the last couple of months, I felt the same way though. Cause if you go look at even just my personal like TikTok or Instagram, you will see 4 photos that have been there for 4 years. And like, I don't do that. But recently, because of like, I don't like Donald Trump. Like, and I
don't know. Do we need to break that down?
I used to make punk rock and stuff. And now I'm like, my teenage self feels that angst again. And I'm making some like kind of angsty art as a way to express. And now I'm like, I want this to be on my social feeds. Like I feel like it's okay to take up space in this direction, because this feels like something that's needed. So I don't know if that has anything to do with your calling as well in the last 6 months, but it's like time for people like you to rise up. You know? It
does. It is. I think so many people are going through this right now. It's actually one of the reasons that I believe I'm being called to show up, is because there are people that need support and guidance, especially from people that have walked through it or like have a grounded perspective, or maybe have been in the corporate world or have done a 180 with their life, or are weird and go live in tents and ditch everything. I don't know. You never know who needs support. But yeah, it really is. And to your point about the teenager, right? Like feeling into that, it feels like your inner teenager got liberated. So now they're just...
That's kind of what it feels like to me too.
Like it just, like, even when you spoke about it, your energy shifted, your mannerisms, everything. And then it went back to you now. So it's just so cool to see, because that liberation came out, like popped out and was like, hey. And then it came out.
Oh, I love that. That's really fun. It makes, for some reason, I feel like choked up by that, because that's something that you had to like fight against.
Well, I had to crush it to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, it's too much of a dichotomy to like feel. You had
to like shut it down.
Yeah, to feel that way and then go show up for your corporate gig. That like it's hard to work for the man during the day and then like write songs against it during the night. Like how hypocritical is that? Yeah. And now I'm in a position to not have to like have such a dichotomy that are at odds, you know? So I feel like I'm allowed to do that again.
But you also just recently in the last couple of months had the realization that you are allowed to take up space, or that you felt like you couldn't for a while. And like, that's an interesting thing too. Finally, like
that's an annoying
stepping into that. Like it's okay.
It's an annoying thing for a cis white male to say, I feel like I need to take up more space. I mean, you know, white presenting at least, but when I see some other dudes out there, I had to go to Lowe's to pick something up, and I walk in, I'm like, you know, I'm reserved, head down. I'm going to go quietly do the thing I need to do. And I just saw a guy like, I never told you this.
I'm like on it. I'm like, tell me what's happening.
Sorry, I don't want to like waste your time with a stupid Lowe's story.
Tell me, because I have so much that I want to acknowledge for after this.
First of all, this dude's like 7 feet tall, right? He's walking his dog into Lowe's, and I noticed without looking at a sign, can you bring your, I don't know if you could bring your dog into Lowe's.
I think you can.
Okay, cool.
They don't sell food.
On the phone, talking at somebody about like, oh yeah, well that's why I got my fucking lawyer on it. And I'm like, I can hear you from across the parking lot. And I'm like, just trying to get in and get out and like be cool. And I'm like, why is he so confident? Like, what are you bringing to the table right now except for loud? You know what I mean? Wow. I was so like, and it was a little thing like that. Yeah. That made me think, what am I being so reserved for when like you're even on the phone talking about the system, you're talking about your lawyer and all this stuff. It's probably over something dumb. Like,
so funny.
Why can't I be that expressive about important things? You know what I mean? Or at least, at the very least, give people that I know a platform to be vocal about that kind of stuff. Like, you know, like what we're doing here on the show. Yeah. I can still be loud and annoying, and I'm still the guy in the room, but like, you know, I like being able to give other people a platform where they don't necessarily have to be loud, because the room's a little quieter than that 7-foot monstrosity that walked into Lowe's with me.
Okay, I have so much. I love this story, and I love this 7-foot monstrosity, because just imagine for a minute that he was supposed to be there for you. Imagine for a minute that his presence awakened a realization in you, and your team of light orchestrated that for you. Because not everybody shows up to be a nuisance. Sometimes that orchestration is showing up to be a lesson or an awakening moment. Mm-hmm. And even that you're talking about it and it allowed you permission for like your soul to take up space. Like, I love what you said about, I'm a cis white man presenting. Who wants to hear me take up space? But like, there's a difference. Like, you can even say my ego versus my soul. Like, you can even start saying like, my soul wants to take up space.
That's what it feels like to me.
Because you're everyone's soul. Like, it doesn't matter what body you were born into. You didn't choose that necessarily. Maybe you did. But a lot of us are just like on a mission to learn, regardless of what form we come into. And so your soul is always going to want to take up space and be aligned.
Yeah, that is what that moment felt like. It wasn't like my outward appearance that I was concerned about taking up space. I didn't want to compete with that person. I just wanted to, and I don't even want to be as loud or as big as that person. It's okay to take up space, to represent what you're supposed to represent in this world.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I don't want to be this guy. I don't know who wants to be this guy. Probably not a lot of people. But
and at the same time, it's like, more power to this guy. How cool would it be to walk into a space and not give a shit about what anybody was thinking?
It is a vibration.
Because he genuinely.
It is a vibe. Like, it is a vibration. You feel that and you're like, this is the raw power you walk through life with, regardless of if you like it or not. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Like, way less aware of your surroundings for sure.
Yeah. Back to you. I ended up talking about me so much on the show. I feel so bad
it's like
about
my
it.
favorite part because it's conversational and it's humans. And I love the interview aspect, but like also we learn so much through other people's stories. I think being told logically versus someone animating a piece of their life that they awakened to or went through, like someone's going to hear that and be like, whoa, I can take up space. That's awesome.
Yes, you can take up space.
Yeah.
We need you to even. Your reawakening started when you're 25. That was, on the road, living in national parks, which is something I'm a little jealous of. I think that sounds very cool and unique. And how long did that process take before you said, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be?
28 to 20 or 25 to 28 and a half.
Okay.
Was about when, so what ended up happening is I was in Seattle, panic attacks started happening again. And I'm just going to tell it. I found people who understand Groupon will understand this, but at the time Groupon was still normal and cool and you could use it for anything. So please don't come at me for using a Groupon.
Groupon had a shining
mess now.
It had a shining moment in history, and if you missed it, I'm so sorry, but it was glorious for 5 minutes.
So for the 5-minute shining moment in history, this incredible Reiki healer put her thing on Groupon, and I was, still like trying to figure out finances and student loans and all the things people figure out, and so I was like, a Groupon for Reiki, like, so I bought it. I went and saw her. I thought this could be really weird or really awesome. And I wasn't sure which way it was going to go. And I stepped into this magical humans portal of a room and she's dressed in like Uggs and there's like an eagle wing, or I think it was an eagle or hawk wing that had been gifted to her through ceremony on, there was feathers and there was like drums and she's just like lay on the table. And I had never been to receive Reiki. And she did this entire beautiful ceremony. And after I got off the table, she chatted and told me the messages that came through. And she had a, native lens that was her rite of passage and history. And so she brought that in, which was just so new and beautiful to me. And she looked at me and was like, you have these abilities. You've been ignoring them and it's okay. Like, it's safe. It's okay to do this, to go after this, to recognize this. And she was the first person and also the first woman that ever looked at me and like gave me permission. And from then, that moment on, it was like the floodgates were like, whoa, here we go. That's when I immediately signed up for Reiki. I found this amazing teacher in Seattle. I was with her for many years. I joined this cohort of probably about 15 other amazing healers that we went through like an advanced intuition, energy, psychic medium learning. And then from there, it just like keeps going. It just really blew open. From Groupon.
You're in it.
Thank you, Groupon.
Groupon.
Groupon. Oh my gosh.
This episode of Clairvoyaging is sponsored by Groupon.
Bringing it back.
We're bringing it. That's our new slogan. We're bringing it back, baby. That's so cool.
Wow. That's really beautiful.
How nice of like how nice of to have that kind of ushering into your new spiritual period.
Yeah. I feel very fortunate. I hope to be able to do that for other people. That's really why I show up like this every day, is because I know that there's people that feel lost and scared and nervous and things are hitting them and they don't know why. And I don't want anyone to walk this alone. It's a tough time in our modern history as well. And so if you add in all the factors that are going on for people, they have a hard time disseminating what's their own voice, what's an outside voice, what they should feel. And I just hope to be able to like extend a hand and say, it's okay, you're safe. Let's walk. Let's walk together. That's kind of my
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We need people like you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I didn't know what Reiki was, and I had like a nice session. It wasn't anything as like profound as that. It was I was actually driving up to it, and I was like, this is at her house. Oh God, this is at her house. I've never done this before. And I'm at some lady's house. And what if she is going to actually murder me? Like, I think I sent you my location.
You did.
I was like, I just realized, like, I don't know what I'm walking into at all.
Well, she's like, I think I just met her husband.
No, I think I was like, what if she has a like a murdery husband?
A murdery husband.
I don't. Yeah, very different experience.
I mean,
yeah, everyone go to Reiki for your first time if you haven't, but make sure you share your location with somebody just in case they have a murdery husband.
It was very lovely and so peaceful, and she immediately like, I was put at ease and like, oh, okay, this is great, but an eagle wing and like. She was just like, oh, your hands have a lot of energy in them. You must have been a healer in another life or whatever. And I'm like, okay.
Well, it sounds like, Kelsey, you got someone who is not just a Reiki master, but also or a Reiki practitioner, but also very, very deeply intuitive.
Yeah. What I see so much happen is, and you're spot on with that, is that a lot of us go through Reiki as a modality to make sense of it all and to honor that tradition. And then we start tuning into our own channels and bringing in the information that's meant for us and the healing modalities that are meant to come through us. And they often integrate and look very different. Reiki's a really beautiful way for people to understand they're safe in that space because we're honoring the boundaries. Like I still honor the same boundaries that Reiki taught me, but the energy work I'm doing is different modalities and my own modalities throughout too.
I wanted to ask you about that because we always advocate for Reiki on the show, but I have been told once by somebody that they sensed Reiki and the symbols you learn or receive as somewhat limiting. And it sounds like you've maybe used Reiki as a launch pad for other stuff. Is there a truth to that where like Reiki can be somewhat limiting if you're ready to move beyond it?
It seems to me like you take, you have like a spark and a fire, right? And so if you're trying to have like a tiny fire, little like tiny spark fire, and you're roasting one marshmallow, that feels safe there. But if you have a whole group of people that are trying to make s'mores, it's going to be really hard to do it with that little flame. You need a huge roaring fire to make the group s'mores. I don't know if this analogy is making sense, but I'm gonna roll with it. So basically, Reiki feels like for me, it can be just as powerful, but for me, it was that smaller flame where I could work with one person and work through some of those initial energies. But it was too small of a container to hold everything. Like it needed to be a bigger fire. And so the way that this energy comes through now is completely different hand movements and signals. And I don't limit them based on signs as much as like what my team of light instruct me to do through just receiving. So everything I do is is going to look different every single person that comes through. It's never going to be the same practice.
And do you do that as an individual practitioner, or you are now doing that as a group? So
that's where I've kind of transitioned is when I started teaching group work and I started, holding space for 8 to 10 or plus people at a time. I just needed to have a full expression of energy flow. So I'm bringing in all sorts of the rainbow people and my home galactic planet healers. And I'm bringing in, all of the like ascended masters or working with angels. I'm working with a lot of different entities of the light, I would say, that are bringing in energy flow in just the most beautiful way.
So is it more or less like you have a giant toolbox at your disposal now that Reiki showed you how to initiate?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
Was that something you were trained in or something where you intuitively started picking up more and more kind of information through your guides and like intuitively knowing what to do?
It was both. I feel really fortunate it was both. So the same person who taught me Reiki through all the, levels, then I went on to do what she called an advanced intuition program, which was a cohort of many healers that were ready to learn different modalities. And so that's when I got introduced to a lot of these beautiful beings and modalities. And then from there, when I kind of went off on my own, it's all been what's been coming through my own experiences, through like activation, through meditation, through channeling, and exploring as well, like what I do for myself and my family, because I tend to also bring those same healing modalities into my own practice as well.
That's cool. What are rainbow people?
I hope I can do this justice because this was introduced to me, but they are, I want to make sure like I'm politically correct here, but a ancient Hawaiian healers as well. Oh, so there's two. There's the ancient Hawaiian healers, and then there's the rainbow people. And so these are all beings that help come ground and stabilize and flow. Think of like a rainbow light through the person who's doing the hands-on healing through. And it's just a very like safe, clearing, high frequency light. And they show up and they'll usually like place hands and ground and stabilize. So it's like if you're feeling like you need extra support in a session, I'll call in different beings depending on what level of support I feel I need to offer the person. Like for instance, if the person is going through or has gone through immense trauma or honestly sexual trauma, I'll call in a lot of those beings to help ground and provide that extra layer of like love and healing support as I'm helping them work through that. Because it comes up to the surface.
This is a dumb question, but
there's no dumb question.
I always like when you call in like different beings, do you kind of have this sense of like, okay, they've arrived, or like Archangel Michael is here now, and like, what that feels like?
Yeah, so for me, it's a feeling, so I can feel and know. So those are two big ones for me. And then I think after the feeling and knowing comes the seeing. And then for me, the hearing is actually more on the last echelon for me. I'm always working with all of them, but I tend to, I will like feel their presence. And I guess I do for certain of them I'll see, but I won't see like the full being. I might see just like the hand. I know that sounds really creepy, but it's not. It's very comforting, like the hand or the light, right, on either side. I do see people's guides and I do see their team of light, but I feel them first in my like physical presence in my body, or like I'll feel the essence of them come through. And with working with angels as well, like you can sometimes hear, at least for me, you can hear like I know this sounds really also wild, but like a frequency change. So that's how I know that light being showing.
Wait, hold on. A frequency change. The sound you just made makes it sound like, when an electric car rolls down the road and they make that sound. So,
it sounds like that. It sounds
like
exactly
that?
Like a light hum.
Yeah. It sounds like
wild.
that.
It sounds like that. Like when they're backing up and it turns on, it's like, it's that. That's the frequency I hear them show up for me. So I always trust. I love that too, though, because I have seen a lot of dark things and I have witnessed and felt a lot of energies as an unprotected, like without being able to protect or ask them to go away. And for a lot of my life, I felt fear because I was witnessing all these without being able to escape or like send them away. And so I love that I can now sense when a being is of like the light and has a really high frequency and is there for like the highest and best good. So my entire practice is so big on making sure those beings are there for the absolute highest and best for whoever is with me.
Man, that's so nice. I want to hear that.
So you said that
I gotta meditate more.
Oh, you want to hear that the sound?
Yeah, I want to hear like angels or.
Oh, well, just next time you hear that, just look around you to make sure there's not a Chevy Bolt backing up somewhere.
Make sure that too, because it could really throw you off. You can be like, God, is that you? And they'll be like, it's just a bunch of kids getting into the ice cream.
It's just a hybrid. It's a Prius.
The last thing you want is to think you're about to like see an angel and then to have someo's like license plate embedded in your forehead.
Yeah,
so
it's wild. I will say they aren't all like that. The beings that I feel had a lot of past life, regressions that have been facilitated for me. And these intergalactic beings that are like my home place. I actually haven't talked to it about it out loud a lot yet because I wanted to make sure I was really grounded in what I was channeling and bringing through, but they came to me with like an activate type of thing where it was a very strong presence. And it was like a physical touch and then a telepathic connection. And so they aren't all as like, some of them are a little more intense than that.
Yeah.
Can you say more about what you mean by activate?
Yeah, I can. So I was in the woods by my house. I had some really strong readings, some really strong things coming through in the last couple of weeks. Prior to that, I had learned about this past life on this planet as this being years prior. Like I had sat with it for 5 to 7 years, I think. 5 to 7 years at this point. And all of a sudden, I get a message from my guides, like, you should touch the ground and then touch your third eye. And I was already in a very spiritual, connected place. And when I get insights like that, now I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. I hope no one hiking, is freaked out, but we're going to do it. So I'm the person in the woods that's like touching the ground, touching my third eye. So I do that. And then I get like,
just go around her, honey.
I'm so sorry. It's happening. And all of a sudden they showed up. I got like an activate, meaning it was a moment of activation. And from then on, they've been called through in my sessions. I've been able to channel them. And it's just been like an incredible new thing that I actually wasn't sure I would ever get the chance to like speak with them directly or feel called to them in that way to channel messages from them. But that was wild. That was the first time that's happened to me. So
that's amazing.
Wow. Okay, so when people are saying activations, because I don't think I've gotten that definition before, but when someone says an activation, it's like potentially a new energy that someone might be connecting with or able to sense.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Everyone seems to be a bit different in how they perceive an activation. For me, it felt like I was able to hold it. Like my abilities were grounded enough. I had learned enough. I had been safe enough. I could control how my energy was like protected in the world where I was like ready for it. And so It was a connection with these beings that I am assuming was part of my soul path and I was meant to connect with them, but it was just a matter of like when or how that would be safe to do that. It is for me a home, what I call my home planet. So it feels like an origination point for me. So as far back as I have been able to go, and it is beings that are telepathic based, but they communicate energetically. They are tiny, blue, with like these beautiful antennae on them, and they actually sync with the earth. So the earth and them, they speak the same language as their planet. It's a really fascinating, beautiful exploration. Like I'm sharing it real time because I'm exploring it. And I've done all the work to understand if these beings exist for other people. And I can't find anything on the web or of any existence that anyone has mentioned this specific like planet and beings and how they communicate. So I'm also just really curious about that.
That is interesting. I haven't heard anybody. Wait, did you get a name for like a planet or a people?
I did actually earlier today. So that's why it's really fresh on my mind. It's basically the way it feels. So it's a little hard, but is like La Noa is the rhythm and vibration. And so that is how they've come through with the planet, but they've let me know that that's not how they name it. It's just how I can receive it in English.
Sure.
Wow. Oh, I'm so curious to hear how that progresses.
Yeah. That's really cool.
I love being able to
That's
share
awesome.
real time though, because I do want everyone to know that we're all on this journey. None of us have figured it out. None of us are walking this at least no one I know, even the best teachers I have are not some super enlightened beings that have it figured out. Like we are revisiting the same stuff over and over again. And anything that my team of light wants to share or like these beings or other beings want to bring through, I just honor that it's like the right time.
Yeah.
Right. And if I can add a very human point to that too,
anybody who acts like they have it all figured out or know what's going on is lying.
Run away.
Yeah. Red
Run
flags.
away.
Red flags everywhere.
Yeah, it's good to have confidence, but I think we all need to be humbled by this work and this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a very human 3D experience.
It is. Unfortunately, I think we're moving into more of a 5D experience. It feels like there's been a huge shift these last, 6 months, but I'm not sure if you two have felt it as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Even as muggles, like there's a clear push into something new, and it's very interesting to try and, as people who are solidly in the 3D realm right now, it's very interesting to still perceive that and be like, whoa, something big is afoot,
But even just the amount of people, and I don't think it's just because I'm more willing to like have these conversations like that we have on our podcast. I think it's interesting to see the shift in like other people's like willingness, where like even 2 years ago, if you like talk about past lives or spirits or something, there's still people who are like, yuck, don't like, I hate that or something. But then there's a lot of people where you can feel like, oh yeah, I'm all about it. And you're like,
people waiting to talk about it.
Yeah. So, and it feels like it's a bigger collection. Again, could be because I'm just like, you want to talk about it? But it does feel like it's becoming a little more widespread or acceptable, or I don't know.
Yeah, when people would ask
here
me
in California,
it's true, but like people would ask me even a year ago, what do you do? And I would just say, I'm a Reiki, I'm an intuitive energy healer. I would leave out the psychic medium part all the time until I felt like I was safe to say that, like internally, I think inside, and then also externally.
Yeah.
So it took me a really long time to speak that part out loud, but that's like the truest part of what I do. So there had to be some reckoning there. Your guides are funny. They keep bringing little messages through. And the one they just brought through, I have to tell you because I think it's very funny.
Wait, my guides or Frank's or both of ours?
Both. Well, okay. So hold on.
What did I say?
It originated from Frank's, but the vision of like your future looks a little different than Frank's. They're two paths converging but separate, like walking alongside. But the thing
we've been told that before.
Yeah.
The thing they keep saying is, or that they just said when you said the muggles like us, is immediately they came in and said, tell them they're not as muggly muggles as they think they are.
You know what's funny? As soon as I said that, I said, that doesn't feel like I should be saying that anymore.
Yeah.
And I even thought of a backup joke saying, it would be funny if we called us struggles because we're struggling to unmuggle, but it's fine.
They like that joke better. They like that joke a bit better.
Good.
But they were not, they weren't pleased that you put yourself in that category.
Got it. My bad.
And by pleased, they had to joke because they always do everything through, humor. Like if you have a joyful humor essence, they'll come in exactly like that.
That's good to know. Okay. All right.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So wait, hold on. What else do they have to say?
Let's do it. Okay. So what's fascinating, Lauren, when they show me your path a little bit, and I don't know if you've felt this before, but like Reiki was the foray, but they're actually not showing me with you as like a hands-on healing, that it actually comes through of more of a like a mind, through the mind. Like you have a really strong mind connection. So it's more of a understanding. So you'll be able to pull messages through they're showing me a pretty soon timeline. 1.5. So like I'm taking that as years, not months, where there's like a turning point and you're going to start getting like messages through from your guides, and your guides will be able to communicate with other people's guides. And so it comes through as like a thought, but it's like, it in your head. So no logic can explain. So that seems to be your path in, not so much the hands-on healing.
You've already done that a handful of times and you know it too.
Yeah.
You've been like, we've talked about it on the show before, but Lauren gave me a talking to recently, just like an encouraging talking
and she
to.
channeled it.
And she was like, I'm in lockstep with your spirit guides right now. Lauren is calm. She got fired up. She knew.
I was. Yeah. Yeah. It was like, I know he needs to hear all of this, and it's all coming out so easily that it felt like I was just joking about being in lockstep with your spirit guides, but it also felt very true.
Yeah, it felt true
They
to me.
said, were you though? Because they think that you owned the truth for a minute. Like that's how it feels, is that you owned the truth, and it felt safe. It felt good to do that because it was with him. But
it did. Yeah.
They're showing me this opening up for you with people that aren't just in your circle and not just like conversations you can feel safe in. But there's going to be, so there's a really interesting like lifeline for you there where you make this more of your life than you anticipated it's going to be.
Really?
This work. Yeah. This seems to streamline into more of like a main part of your life. And so the word guide is coming through. So they're showing me guide. They're showing me edgy. So they're showing me a clientele or like a circle of people that don't have someone for them, right? That like it's too much in the light for some people, but you're bringing an edgier vibe to this process. And so they show me as like you as kind of branded as like an edgier healing guide for people. They're showing me a lot of fire. So like a fiery personality, a fiery guide, fire, like not afraid to speak your truth, interwoven with like all of your ideology and beliefs around like gender, politics. These are all things that are like streaming in, so that this core of you is just going to like, and then this ability comes into it. I don't know if you've explored ever coaching or coaching women, but that also looks like an avenue.
That's interesting because I just did this thing where someone told me like they went through this whole process of showing me what my gift is, and like they gifted me or whatever. It was like this kind of visualization thing, and it was like putting together that my gift is like creating an environment to talk. I help create an environment for people to talk about difficult things in a safe way. And I was like, well, that's what we're doing on our podcast, but also that's kind of what I do because of just the grief that I've experienced or challenges and stuff like that. I like getting in there to like work through. I wouldn't want to be a therapist, but I like helping people with their like trauma or like kind of helping, like, let's clear that out, or like, let's get in there and like talk about it or bring it to the surface where you can heal it. And I can like help you through that and help you like have ways to do that. So as I'm talking about that now, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of similar to coaching.
I love that for Lauren too, because like, I think I've been waiting for a long time for Lauren's like fiery spirit to erupt. And I know it's there.
It's there.
I know it's there, but there's some like hesitation. And I want to.
Yeah, it's like anytime I battle through like self-doubt or, what like self-worth, it's kind of that who am I to whatever.
Yeah.
Who is anybody though?
But it's cracking. Yeah. It's like the cracks are there a little bit, and it feels like it's going to break open pretty soon. And even when you talk about that intuitive guide coach getting in, there's women that need that. And there's people that need that don't want hands laid on them. Like that's just not a comfortable place. I also think you do better through like a phone medium or a video medium, because you can focus more on the messages you're getting. Like it seems like you get more real time instead of getting in the confusion of someone else's energy a little bit. So like that. Physical separation. But when you talked about that, when you were speaking about what you had been interested in or envisioning, there was a really strong resonance of money as a frequency, as a tool. So that seems really tied to like a value, a worth of like, I should absolutely do this, and I absolutely should charge people for this, because that is the exchange, right? We have to exchange in order to keep the balance. So that's an equilibrium. It feels like a step out of, I don't want to say out of motherhood, but like there's motherhood and then there's this fiery, emboldened, strong you that's coming out of that, that's being born out of that. But it's just a little bit it's over this next year and a half.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Frank, yours is a little different, right? Like you actually love the tangible. So.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, your stuff is, but I see through production and like music and visual art, even an encoding of things to help people. Starting as that, like it feels like you're encoding a lot of this beautiful light and energy and understanding shadows and walking through your own and like accepting your own self, but like encoding it in your work a little bit more and what you're putting.
That's what I have been doing. Yeah. But I've just started that.
Yeah, that's your path for a little bit. It's going to evolve, but it's going to get bigger. Okay. It's going to shift and morph. It looks like right now it's like this swirling kind of purple energy ball. And then all of a sudden it's just like, whoosh, and it gains momentum, right? And now all of a sudden, and then you're pulling people into your sphere. And instead of someone telling you what to do, it seems like you're guiding other people, but not in a like counseling way or in a guide way, but more in an arts way, like through your language, through the language of your soul.
You're spot on to like how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff I've been pushing you towards just for whatever reason, because I feel like that's where you're going.
Yeah.
And you've been like, but for what? But what? You know?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, that's how it feels in terms of like, even the color. Like I've been very purple based lately, and I don't know why. It's just that's been resonating for me so much. And like this, you pointed it out, this like respiriting of myself of like, wait, I was angsty and I was 16 and I was 17 and that was not wrong. It's okay. And now coming into it I'm 40 now, coming into it from more of a, not an authoritative standpoint, but like I am now on the captain's crew of the world now, you know, and I still feel the same way. I mean, even with the show, like help this be a bridge for people to get to the next part of their lives if they have felt like down and out, you know?
Yeah.
And if I can collect people and filter them to Lauren, that would be like the greatest thing in the world. That's like what I would love to do.
Yeah, it really
I would like to collect edgy people and send them to my newly discovered edgy version of my wife.
It like you said, it feels like your paths are walking alongside and they converge a little bit, but then they look really different. Two different energies.
Yeah.
And but they're complementary in the way that your paths are expanding. Yeah, your purple swirly seems to be getting larger, which attracts. When you have that expansive energy, it starts to attract people in need of that. And I know you're in the captain's ship and that can be a lot of pressure, but your guides are just reminding me to speak truth to you about like all of this had to happen so you could share your truth with other people. And if you get a harebrained idea for a project that feels totally like an anomaly, please explore that because they would really like you to explore that. Oh my God.
You hear that, Lauren? Wait, like every hour? Because I've got about a new one every hour.
No,
it's bad.
This one's been sitting with you. This is one you keep revisiting. So it's not one that's just like, what kind of business could we start today? It's actually one that keeps kind of popping into your space in different ways, but the core of it's the same. So it's definitely creative. It definitely has a visual aspect. It is different though than like what you do. I don't know how else to say it, but it feels like kind of a like an opposite. Like if you had two ideas on a like seesaw, right? It would be balancing the other half of your seesaw. And so, yeah, they're just reminding me to tell you to explore that keeps flowing in.
I'm just starting to allow music to be a part of my life again. And I have also just started doing some like visual art stuff again. Okay. And stuff that I would have normally classified as a waste of time and like silly, especially in a period of time when like, I'm like, where's the payday coming? Cause you know, we're trying to move and all that stuff, but I'm like, I also really feel drawn to do this. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, spot on.
You won't have the full picture right now, but it's coming soon. You won't have the full picture right now. Like, you know, sometimes people see visions of the future and they get a full picture and they just know where they're heading. And sometimes they see one step and it's just completely blank until they take the next step. Yours seems to be like a settled, I know we've talked about your location, but it does feel tied to location a bit, where once you're in an energy of exploration and you're settled, then you will get the bigger steps. You'll get those 10 steps ahead of you because your path needs to lead you to like that space. And then the 10 steps are going to show up because you can't see the 10 steps from where you are right now because they don't exist in your periphery, like in your circle.
Yep.
I've been told that too. It's so frustrating. I love this. I put her on my water bottle. It's the Two of Swords. More than anything, it's just a blindfold. I'm like, I just got to trust the process here.
Yeah. They're saying like jump and we're going to catch you. And they made a joke. They're like, not the catch you in our arms, but like in a big like black parachute where you like bounce up and down for a while and they like are going to make it fun. Like they want to ensure that it's going to be fun and it's going to be a bit of a wild ride, but it's going to be fun. It's not going to be typical or linear or like prescribed. It's going to look a little bit wild for you guys.
That makes sense because anything that's been typical or linear or prescribed so far has not panned out. So I'm in it for the ride.
Anyways, that's just a few things I wanted me to pull through for you guys.
And that's so helpful. Thank you so much.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah. That's like, and also like for me particularly, like I feel like the stuff I needed to hear right now.
Yeah.
This is like stuff that we were talking about even
Both
today.
of us. Yeah.
I always say like sometimes the messages that come through don't have to be this profound, like, hey, your life is gonna, it doesn't always feel that way. Sometimes it's just the things that are going on in the moment. We just need reassurance. We need to know that they are in tune with us and that they are seeing our life play out and helping guide us as we create our own lives. Because ultimately we're creating, right? We're creating our lives, but we have guidance.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you one more question. Of all the things you did during your like developmental phase of getting to this point in your life where you're now this incredibly comfortable, incredibly intuitive person. And I know it's a journey. I'm not saying you're done, but
It's okay.
To get to the point that you're at now, what was the like one thing that if you could pull one thing that anybody could do that's like just the thing they should start doing now to address any like discomforts that they have? I did not ask that correctly. What am I asking? What am I trying to ask?
What you're asking.
I don't know.
No, it feels aligned. I'm going to tell you why. Because I know this is going to sound like a plug, but I think it is happening at the right time. I just announced I'm launching a course next week on embodied intuition of daily rituals for awakening intuitive living. And it's just like a little 5-day mini course, easy, low, whatever. But the reason I did it is for that exact reason, is because that is what I want to share with people, is like what I would do if I could do anything. And it's really about dimming the noise of what people are telling you, of any inputs. Like when I went through all of this, I stopped drinking, I stopped doing psychedelics, I stopped drinking coffee. Like my life is, I stopped watching TV. I'm very like about what goes in my system, right? It all just went away. I love to dance and I love festivals and I love to still go out and have a good time. But anyways, those daily rituals for me changed and it felt like I didn't have a guidance system. So I would just really tell people to like tune in to their daily listening, figure out through channeled writing, through journaling, through any easy means, but like weave it in really low impact ways. Because as parents, as for me as a mom, or just as a neurodivergent person, anything that required me to have a 20, 30, 50-minute dedicated ritual was painful and horrible, and it never stuck. And I truly just like, it sent me back in the fact that I felt guilt and shame and second guessed myself for not being able to take that time and just like dedicate it.
I love that you're doing that.
No, it's amazing. So, well, while we're at it, why don't you give everybody else your other plugs so they know where to find you and see what other work you're doing?
Yeah, you can find me on all the places under the same handle. So Kelsey Anderson Intuitive. I am on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. I run a Substack called Soul Threads, and I have a podcast on Spotify and Apple called Soul Threads. And you can also visit my website, kelseyandерsonintuitive.com. And that's where you can find me. And I'll be, having that course come out next week for anyone who wants daily rituals for intuitive living.
What fantastic timing.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's no coincidences.
No coincidence.
Here we are having a good old time.
Thank you so much, Kelsey.
Thank you guys. Thank you for making it a really fun space.
Yay. Thanks, Kelsey.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Visit clairvoyaging.com for merchandise or to access free resources to help you on your spiritual journey. Subscribe to our Patreon for more content or join for free to chat with us. Clairvoyaging is a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas, a 501c3 charity.
Make a tax-deductible donation to support our mission to foster understanding, respect, and curiosity for diverse spiritual belief systems. Clairvoyaging is a production of Wayfeather Media.